Have you ever thought you could be the hero of your own story? Hi, my name is Ian McCullum, and in this podcast, Tales of the Stardust, I will be telling you stories from antiquity and world mythology, but in a different light and different perspective, with lessons that you can incorporate in your everyday life, because these stories have been told from generations to generations. So come and join me as we dive deep down in today's story. I would just like to take a moment and thank Anchor for sponsoring this episode today. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast and have your story that you have been so desperate to tell. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listeners, and it's everything that you need all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And now, back to the story. When we think of Greek heroes, we usually think of the spontaneous, flamboyant kind of personalities that just command the stage in all their mythos and stories. But in this story today, I want to focus on a character that is not actually seen as a hero, but she has the strength of being one, in a power that is not really commemorated for. This is the story from the theogony that started out for the whole Olympians. This is the story of Rhea and the birth of Zeus. After the war between Cronus and Uranus, his father, Cronus became king of the universe and took Rhea, his sister, as his wife. When Rhea was pregnant with their first child, Cronus was warned with a prophecy that one day his son would overtake him. And fearful of this premonition, when Rhea had their first child, he took the baby and swallowed it whole, as well with the other 5 children that she had. Rhea could not do anything about this because she had to obey her husband. However, after her 5th child was swallowed whole right in front of her, and she couldn't do anything about it, she decided that something had to be done. Now, Rhea and most of the Titanesses were not known as war goddesses at all. They weren't like Athena or Artemis yet. Rhea was a very gentle goddess and wasn't known for sticking up for herself in that sort of way. So what could she do? Well, she thought, and one of the main things that her husband only saw in her was that she was quiet and obedient. So she devised a plan. She had her last child, Zeus, in secret, and when she returned back to her husband to give the child for him to devour, she wrapped a stone in cloth and gave it to him, and acted the same exact way that she did for the rest of her 5 children. If it wasn't for Rhea, the Olympians would have never been out of their father's stomach, and Zeus would have never became king of the gods. But there's more to that story. As we can see in the beginning, even though it's very small, it's Rhea who starts off the mythos. So why is she not seen as a hero? What is the lesson that she's trying to teach us through her story? It's that question of brains and brawn. Even though this doesn't really seem a very tactical way, but it was the right way in Rhea's eyes and in Rhea's strengths. Because what she did was she played off her strengths, which was concealing her plan, as in acting the way that her husband thought she was acting. We usually tend to think of superheroes and heroes in mythology as these big, flamboyant, somewhat hubris, but it's only recently that we started to see a little shift in the underdogs. And this is an underdog story in such a way. As in, Rhea didn't have a voice of where her children were going to be or what was going to happen to them. It was all based off of Cronus' decision. So, what's the story about? It's not really about breaking the status quo, but it's about changing in the way that suits your strengths. Because we all have different types of strengths. That's why some of us can do things better than others can. But Rhea's strength in this story is not really about saving her son necessarily, but it's her looking inside herself and finally saying, this needs to change. This is not okay. And that kind of thinking for most of us is hard because she's not striving to be the hero of this story at all. She just wants change and the good. She wasn't trying to be the hero. She was just trying to get her son out of the clutches of the father. Because she realized that the only person that can do the change was her. So she took the initiative and became the hero. And that was her taking a deep breath and saying, this needs to stop, and this needs to change. And none of the Titans were going to help her, so she had to help herself. And that is the lesson of sometimes when we are faced with problems and we reach out for help, sometimes the answer is right under our noses, and that we can fix it. We can be the hero of our own stories if we just take a deep breath and say, I can do this, or I have to do this, as Rhea would have said to herself. And her silence and not showing hubris is because she didn't do it for the glory. She did it out of the love for her son. But she was also being true to herself and being true to her own strengths that she had. Even though Zeus is the one that defeats his father in the end, Rhea is the one that starts it. She's the one that lit the spark when no one else would, because she decided within herself that she can do it. That's what the story is about. Because if it weren't for Rhea, the whole Greek Mythology Pantheon may have never would have happened. And it was all based off of her. And that choice that she said, today, this is not going to happen again. Because she knew the outcome. She always knew what the outcome would have been. Her 5 children have been eaten right in front of her. Because sometimes our superpowers or our strengths are right under our noses. But it's our job to say, I'm going to be the hero of this story. Thank you so much for listening to Tales of the Stardust. My name is I Am McCullum. And if you'd like to see more content like this, make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at IM_McCullum and let the stars be your guide.